Welcome to the final session of Baking Made Easy, sponsored by Dove's Farm. My name's Xanthe Clay, and I'm a chef, a food writer, and a columnist right here at the Telegraph. And in this 45-minute easy bread masterclass, I'll be joined by master bread maker Richard Bertinet as he demonstrates how to make the French flatbread fougasse and how to harness your inner kneading to achieve the perfect loaf. And without further ado, though, I would like to hand over to Richard. Hi, Richard.
Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
You got me out. Perfect timing.
It's Keith Floyd all over again.
I know, baking with wine is perfect, isn't it?
Perfect. So we're making fougasse today, Richard.
Yes, the fougasse, yeah.
Can you tell me what is fougasse? Tell me.
Well, fougasse, if you go back in your history, the word fougasse starts with the letter F-O, which is the same first two letters for focus, focaccia, fournaise, four oven in French. So in Latin, I think it comes from the word heat intensity. So the fougasse back in the old days was called soufflame in French. And I think it was like a tool on a big wood-fired oven. They used to cut
soufflame means under the flames.
Yeah, under the flame. And then they used to bake it very quickly, so they could judge the temperature of the oven. But I'm sure it was a snack for the baker when they were hungry.
So it was done as a test, so they could see where the hot spots were or whatever, and see it was hot enough. And then it was.
And they become professional. And now you've got it with I've made some actually later with olive inside, and but it's the one was on the front cover of my first book, dough. And then when I teach people to make them happy with bread, to make them happy with dough. Because it looks very dramatic, but it's actually quite easy. If you make good dough, you make good fougasse. So that's
what are you using to flavour this soup fougasse?
Sorry?
What are you using to flavour this one?
To flavour this one? I'm going to plain, but some already.
Fantastic.
Some already to show you I've got some with onions and some lardon and some cheese and some with olive inside. So I will explain to you what you can do and how to jazzy up your bread a little bit. But the one I'm going to show you is the plain one. So it's to master the basic dough first.
Brilliant. So let's get started. How much flour do I need?
Ready. So I'm going to use a 1 kilo mix, so it's more visual for you to see. But if you start with 500 grams of flour, so if you weigh 500 grams of flour in your bowl, that'd be great.
Okay.
We're going to use just 4 ingredients, so very, very simple. We're going to use some strong bread flour. So I know flour can be a bit confusing sometimes, but if you use any strong bread flour, just put to British meal, that'd be great.
Okay.
That's too much.
No, it's not. Well, okay, maybe a little bit.
So
now we're right.
That's right. So, and for 500 grams, you're going to weigh 10 grams of fine sea salt. Try to use sea salt if you got it, not table salt.
Okay.
If you got some nice coarse grain sea salt, it's fine. Fantastic.
Right,
so
okay.
Put your salt on one side now. So push your salt on one side in your bowl a little bit. That's great. And then have you got some fresh yeast or you got dried yeast?
I got dried yeast.
Dried yeast. Which one is it? Show me.
Okay, hold on. 1 second. Tell us about your favourite yeast. Okay. I have this one.
Oh, the quick yeast. I call this man yeast. Not too much of this one. That quick yeast has some kind of chemical in there. So it's very, very fast and very active. So 1 teaspoon of that's plenty.
Okay. Fantastic. And what would I do if I was using fresh yeast or the non-fast action dried yeast?
So I use 10 grams for 500 grams of 10 grams of fresh yeast. So I use you can see the fresh yeast. I'll show you. I got some back somewhere from the fridge. But use fresh yeast. I find it much easier to work with. So we use those little blocks here. As you can see, fresh yeast is very crumbly and beautiful. And I think you affect the taste. But the dried yeast is fine if you don't put too much. I think sometimes it can be a bit too much.
You can buy fresh yeast in health food stores and things like that. I think I've seen it
and in-store bakery will have it. We sell it online. I think most delicatessen, a good Italian delicatessen will sell it, and Polish deli will sell it as well. And in France, you ask your baker for fresh yeast and you get some. So
nowadays, if you go to your baker, he'll say, "I've only got sourdough."
Sourdough, yeah. The curse of sourdough, right? Okay, so put your yeast in there. Put your yeast. Yeah. Fantastic, very good. So mix everything together. And then we're going to wait.
But I put on one side.
Just mix it by hand. It's dry yeast.
Why should I put the salt to one side if I'm just?
It's fine with the yeast, with the flour. So don't worry.
Okay.
Good. And you're going to weigh your water now. Okay.
Okay.
So if you put your water dry, and the temperature of your water is quite important. So I want to talk to you about it very quickly. So
tell me the temperature again.
Right. People get very confused with the temperature of the water. So I never use any of those words like tepid, hand hot, it means nothing. So ideally, is when you put your finger inside, you feel nothing. It's what I call wet water. That makes sense?
Yeah, so it's not hot, it's not cold.
Exactly. But all those words mean nothing. So hot, cold, we understand. Wet is on the middle. And then if it's really cold, you use warm, warmer. And if it's really, really hot, you use cool, cooler. Those 5 words, that's all you need to bake. So your hand, no feeling, perfect for an hour. Because your body will adapt to what's outside. It's quite cool. So your water should be about 27, I think, roughly. So if you weigh 350 grams.
27.5. Oh, it's gone down, but it was 27.5.
Very good. So have you weighed your water? 350 grams. Don't put it in your. Okay, put it on top of your. That's fine. Just put it in. That's fine.
Let's put it in.
Yeah, weigh it now. And make sure you get it accurately. Yeah.
Okay. Being careful.
The flour you use, I don't know how strong it is. It might be very high protein. I'm not too sure.
350.
350. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Well, it seems like a lot.
It's perfect. 350 is perfect. We might even need some more. That's good. That's good. That's good. Okay. 352 now.
You're right. That's really annoying.
Good job. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what to do first, okay, before you get your hand dirty. Because once you have learned about teaching people, the first thing we do is touch everything, and then the brain comes follow. So I use a method of try to think out loud what you're going to do before you put your hand into it. So I'm going to show you, and then you're going to follow me for what I'm doing. Okay. So
let's say just quick questions. Is 350 grams the same as 350 milliliters? It is for water,
yes,
not for other liquids necessarily.
So it's always accurate. If you don't weigh your water, you never know how much you put. So if you weigh your water, I never work with any, all the flour I've used over 15, 20 years of teaching for strong bread flour, never use less than 350 of water. Anything lower than
500 grams of flour,
you make a break. So that's why you can't use my technique if there's not enough water in your dough. You need the softness, you need this to be able to work, That's why I don't use the word kneading. It's a bit different, as you see.
Okay. And David's saying dried yeast is so easy to find. So what's the big deal with fresh yeast?
The problem with dried yeast, we use too much. It's very easy to put too much dried yeast, especially the quick yeast. It's going to be able to make it go faster. And then the rule of thumb with yeast, the more yeast you put in your dough, the quicker you make it, the quicker it goes stale, the less digestible. The less yeast you put in your dough, the longer the process, the better your bread is. So it's not how much yeast you put in your dough, it's just the time you need to let your dough rest and
so the less yeast you use, the longer you leave it to rise, but the better the better.
It's a slow yeast. So it takes longer and your bread is more healthy, that's all. But we want things to be quick all the time and we need to be patient.
And we've got Anjani asking what's the difference between wholemeal flour and wholemeal wheat flour and bread flour.
Okay, so if you imagine so if you got, that's your grain of wheat cut in half, yeah? So the purest flour would be on the center of your grain of wheat. And then the more deeper you go on the outside, so in France you have T45, T55, and T65. T85 is when you start to get wholemeal flour. And then you got whole wheat flour when you get the whole grain, and the gem is out, sieving the flour.
Fantastic.
Process.
So actually,
the center
a bread flour or white bread flour. Yeah.
Yeah, will be the center of your grain. That's as simple as I can explain. And that's done by sieving the flour on massive big scale.
And what's the difference between wholemeal bread flour and wholemeal plain flour? Like you sometimes see wholemeal plain flour for making wholemeal pastry.
If you look if you're not too sure about the strength of your flour, look at the protein level in your flour. You will see on the side of the bag how much protein. The higher the protein, the more water you need. So a strong bread flour will have 12.5% protein. That will be 700 grams of water to 720 grams of water per kilo. A very, very strong bread flour, the strong Canadian wheats and something like that, I can't work with them with less than 850 grams of water for a kilo. Otherwise, you make basketball. It's bouncy. It's so. The thing with the flour, they're made so it doesn't stick. And actually, you've got to have the stickiness to get good bread. You can't make light bread with a dough that you need and it's like a brick. That doesn't work. So it's too bad. And I can talk to you for hours about where this technique come from. We stopped doing this in 1800 in France. So we still teach people how to do this to the dough and to make light bread. That doesn't work. So.
Great. We're going to find out now how to make it light.
Absolutely. Shall I show you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'm going to put the screen down so you won't see my face. You can hear my voice. But so here I got my wine. Oh, we don't need the wine, sorry. I got my water in here. I'm doing 1 kilo, so it's a bit more visual for you, okay? So I've doubled everything. I've got 730 grams of water in my jug in here. I've got 1 kilo of flour, my fine sea salt, and my yeast there. So the first thing I do is cover my salt. I get my yeast in here. I'm going to rub the yeast with the flour in my hand and then mix everything together. That's good. And then I put my water in my flour. Now, where people go wrong now is the first thing they do, they put their hand in there. If you do this, you're with sticky mess everywhere. And the trick now is to keep one hand clean. So if you're right-handed, your left hand becomes your engine, your right hand becomes your dough hook. I use a scraper, and I keep my scraper in my finger there. And then I spin the ball like so. So what I'm doing, this is called in French the phrasage, like slow speed on a mixer. You blend your ingredients together. So at that stage in here, that's where you realize if you've got enough water, if you weigh your ingredient properly, and if everything is working together. So if you can see closely there, everything is getting together. So at that stage, you start to get a bit dry. That's normal. It takes time for the water and the flour to merge together to become a coriander dough. So I'm lifting the flour from underneath and push it into the center. So my left hand is still dry in here.
So great. Oh yeah, no, it's coming together. It's quite sticky. We just got another question about the yeast. So when it was the dried yeast, you could just mix it straight into the flour if it was the fast action yeast. Yes. And whereas if it was a fresh yeast, you were crumbling it in with your fingers.
Yeah, you crumble the flour. Yeah.
And they said, what was the yeast equivalent in dried yeast? Because I can't buy fresh yeast in my area. And it was 1 teaspoon of the quick blend, wasn't it?
I mean, it worked about 7 grams of dried yeast for 10 grams of fresh, roughly.
Okay. And what about normal dried yeast, like not the fast action stuff?
Again, I mean, they say you got to never put sugar with it. Okay, I keep reading you add sugar to it. Don't add sugar. You don't need to add sugar to this. You can put a bit of water and straight into your dough, that'll be fine.
So just dissolve it in a little, if it's not fast action, but just normal dried yeast, you mix it with a little bit of water and pour it in. Okay. You don't see the normal dried yeast around very much. Almost all that you can buy is the fast action now, isn't it? That's it. Yeah.
So now at that stage, you should have the dough become like a very gooey mess in your bowl. Can you see that? So there's no flour showing. There's no water in there. It's all together, but your hand's still dry. So the next stage now is we put this on the table. So now at that stage, most people would put flour everywhere. If you add flour to this at that stage, you change the recipe. So now I'm put this on the table like so.
Hi, just check, Richard. But mine looks really dry compared with yours.
No,
what do you think?
Very so, but I mean, for today, it's fine. If you work it a bit more in the bowl, you should be able to get a bit more sticky. But I would put a bit more water, probably like 20 grams of water. But just for tonight, just put a few drops in your hand and squeeze that water with your hand into the dough.
So squeeze it like so you're sprinkling it on.
Yeah, and squeeze it with your inside the dough, so it will go straight.
Squeeze it like this. Okay, got you. Ha-ha!
That's it.
This is better. Brilliant.
So my bowl is clean in here. I'm going to put this somewhere. And because my hand is clean, I can still have a glass of wine, you see? That's very practical. Very good. So now, if you look down, I got a dough like this. Look at this. And this will frighten people because it's very, very sticky. But for me, that's normal. So the first part was phrasage, mix your ingredients together. Now we need to work that dough. So because it's so sticky, you can't knead this. It's impossible. So what we're going to do is what we call patonnage. We might scrape up and we'll tidy up. So now my dough is one big bit, nice and tidy. The next part we're going to do is what we call in French the découpage. Is lifting the dough off the table. We're going to slap it on the table. That's called passage en tête. Stretch it, étirage, and soufflage, adding air to the dough. So it sounds simple, but have a look. So my hand goes there. I lift the dough up, swing, slap it, stretch it, and fold it. And again. So of course, when you start doing it the first time, usually you put your hand inside the dough and your brain forgets what to do. And you start doing the wrong way around. The dough starts to stick everywhere. So it's really to think about the method before you do it. Again, your legs should be 1 foot forward, 1 back, so you can really go in and out all the time, like this. So every so often, stop and scrape. Now, scraping is what I call walking the dough. You take the dough for a walk, because what you want to do is to keep that thing in here, which is called my top. My top in here is always on the same place. Underneath is the bottom. So when you scrape the dough, the biggest mistake we do is doing this. You bring the sticky to the top. Keep your top nice and neat. So by spinning the dough like that, you can walk it. Your top is always on top. And then you start again. This method is so efficient. You can feel the dough transform itself so quickly. So every so often, stop, quick scrape, and we're back again. It takes a bit of practice, but you'll be amazed how quickly you feel that dough changing and become less sticky and sticky. So when I first started, when I was 14 in the bakery, my boss always used to say to me, show the dough's boss, which in French is il faut maîtriser la pâte. You've got to understand what you're working with. If you're scared of the dough will feel it and then will stick everywhere or fly everywhere in your kitchen. So you have the confidence in your head to know what you're going to do before you touch it. The transformation is incredible. So when I teach people and when they actually get it, it's incredible to see their face because they can really feel how the dough is responsive now. Keep tidying up 3 or 4 times. I heard it was bread week this week at Bake Off also. I haven't watched it yet, but I've recorded it. So I'll be interested to see what method they use. Because very often they're hammering the dough to death and making the dough very heavy. So that's the secret to make a light dough. It's actually doing this, stretch it and fold it and add air to that dough. And this process will take about 10 minutes maximum. Maybe half an hour if you've never done it before. But always keep your top on top. Your top never leave you. Very satisfying. How are you doing, Xanthe?
Yeah, you did well, kind of okay. I'm still working. Can we do really slowly through the technique again?
Sure. So the first part is the main thing. Your shoulder are too high. I know you get high top there, but it's to have 1 foot forward, 1 back. Okay. So your body is there. Open your arms as much as you can, like a ballet dancing, and then you scoop the dough at the front in here. Your thumb at the front of the dough, and you pop it with your legs. Don't stretch it with your arms, so you can swing the dough like that. And as you do this, you slap it. You separate your hand too early, Xanthe. You were like that already. Your hand's got to be, if you look in here, up, and your thumb stay together. So you can put
Okay.
your wrist and slap the tail down. Good. And stretch it towards you. And forward to fold it over itself. Good. Don't fight.
Excellent.
Don't fight with it. And again, like that and there. And you stretch it underneath. So I can see your body language, like the stickiness. It's your body doesn't get used to the stickiness. You got to take over the fear. And now you close
Okay.
your arms so you won't work. Your arm's going to be open there. There's a mixer in the bakery called Artofex. It's a 3-arm mixer, and the dough does this. That's what it does, that mixer. It's based on that technique. So put your thumb on top of the dough. That's good.
Thumb on the dough and then turn it.
It's like your top is there. You swing it so your bottom is here. And you stretch it and fold it over itself. Very satisfying. So my dough is nearly done already. I can see the air pocket forming. I can feel the strands already going there.
And I've got a question for you, which is this the same method that you use for making all bread dough?
Yes. Yeah. I use that. Some dough are stiffer for some different type of bread, but I always got the top and bottom on my doughs. So I always know where my hand goes. When I teach my bakers, or you teach my staff, or when I teach people, it's the same method. Dough is dough, so it's to understand how dough works.
And I've got Philip asking, very endearingly honest. He says, "I'm just a wimp when it comes to mixing dough and kneading it. Can I use a stand mixer?"
Yes, you can. The thing with the mixer, I use mixer all the time, but I always say to people, do it by hand first to understand the feel of the dough. Because when you understand what your hand do, you tell the mixer what to do. And very often we put stuff in the mixer, we don't know what to expect. And the mixer can't do for you is finishing the dough. So you can mix your dough on the mixer. It's 4 minutes on slow speed. Then after the 4 minutes, you want second, third speed. When the dough is coming clean on the side, then the dough is done. But then you got to put it on the table, no flour, and fold it a few times over itself to create that top and bottom. And then you put it to rest. So you get a structure of the dough, that strength of the dough.
And on the same topic, Sylvia says she's made the dough in a bread machine as she's got arthritis. Yes. Does that affect the quality?
No, I mean, the thing with the bread machine, they use very strong white flour very often. I think you need to add a bit more water in there and get a very slow setting. And reduce the yeast a little bit. I think the very strong yeast in there can be a bit detrimental to it. So you can make good bread on a bread machine sometimes, you know.
And Liz is asking, should I throw out the mixer with the dough hook? No, you can use it.
Absolutely not. I think dough is like such a skill. When you learn to do it by hand and you crack it, you want to do it because the feeling of the dough in your hand is quite magical. It's quite unique.
And what mixer do you use, Sue's asking?
I've got a KitchenAid, artisan and a heavy duty one. That's the one we use at the school with a proper dough hook, and they work very well.
And where do you buy your scraper?
In my school, we made them specially. So they fit in everybody's hand. They got the right density of plastic.
And we can buy those online from your school?
Yes, you can on our website. Because very often some are too big and you need something to fit in your hand properly. So this fits exactly in your fingers and perfect for the job to do it in.
Fantastic. I'm going to let you get on with all.
So my dough is nearly done now. It's all come together. The strands is incredible. I can feel it coming off my hands. If you get closer, I don't know if you can see this. I can see all this. I'll show you very close it. You can see the application there. Already forming it. Beautiful. It becomes very light, responsive now. You cannot achieve light stuff or elastic by kneading. It doesn't work. The two are not compatible. So now it doesn't stick to the table. It doesn't stick to my hand. My hand getting cleaner and cleaner. My dough is done. So imagine if you use a mixer, we are at that stage now, the dough will be a bit messy. When you take it off the bowl, just do it a few turns like this. And do what I call the quarter turn. Turn your hand and you fold it over itself. Just turn the dough up to itself. Just like that. So you got a nice, beautiful top in there. Like so. My dough is done now. Of course, it looks Wow, I've done it for many, many years. I'm not scared of the dough. I just don't stick with it. Let's take practice. When you learn a new skill, practice, 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 practice. Don't be scared of it, ever. And when I've done this, I'm going to put a tiny bit of flour on top. Like this. Quick pat and a squeeze. Very important. There. And my dough is done. So, light, support, and elastic. Like this. So I know this will make good bread. I'll put the rest now back in the bowl. So very little flour in my bowl. I leave the dough and place it in there. And then we'll put a baking cloth on top. You don't have to put water on your cloth ever. Okay? Never do that. Get molded. Or a plastic bag if it's very drafty. But if your kitchen is nice and warm and comfortable, you don't need anything else. Let's put the rest. Now I'm going to show you a quick trick, a quick tip also to when your hands are a bit sticky like that, the reflex is to wash your hand. If you wash your hand, all that dough will go to your sink. That's what I better do. The best way to do it is you take a tiny bit of flour and put it in your hand like that. And then you rub your hands really, really hard together. You rub really, really hard. And all that dough will come off. So you can put it in the bin before you wash your hands. And this won't go in your sink. If you need your hand to pick up your fun, your wine, your dog, or anything like that, then this is the biggest way to get your hands dry and there's no dough on top. Although seductive will teach you to have been scared of the dough. How are you doing, Xanthe? She's going. Step to the dough.
Sucking my dough. Yeah, it's definitely getting better
yes,
now.
Very good.
It's definitely less sticky. I have actually moved to a lower surface. Doing it high up just wasn't working for me. But I got a question for you. I've got a dough prover in my oven, Teresa is asking. Can I use that?
My problem with them, those dough prover, they are very, very hot. They're too hot.
What's the best temperature for proving dough then?
There's resting and proving. That's another thing we mistaking. Resting dough is the resting time is after you mix your dough. You can rest it for 1 hour, 2 hours, overnight if you want to. Proving is, for me, is when you divide, shape your dough before it goes in your oven. So if you didn't stand your baking with those two things, so in your head it's much easier to do that. So for resting dough, you can rest your dough ambient and then in the fridge overnight if you want to. Proving, you can leave it ambient also. So don't put it somewhere too hot. You know, it goes too fast. Over 30 is far too hot. Just take your time. Take your time. Learn to master the fermentation around you. So, you know, if you're very hot, you take a layer off. If you're very cold, you put layer on. Dough will react the same way. So if your kitchen is really, really hot, put your dough somewhere cool or your fridge. That makes sense?
That makes sense. And so that sort of covers the question because we've got Maria and Michelle both asking how long do you let the dough rise for?
So the dough, I've done one in advance, and my dough was done about an hour and 10 minutes ago. So you can see what it looked like. It's been on top of my cooker over there, so it's quite nice and warm. But the dough has risen. So if I show you the two dough in contrast.
And Ian's asking, can I put it in the fridge overnight to rise?
Yes, you can. So if you put it in the fridge, you got to let it rise, rest ambient first. So you got to leave it for at least maybe half an hour ambient, and then plastic bag over the top, and then put it in the fridge. Don't put it straight into the fridge. Let it breathe a bit first. Let it ferment first, and then slow down the fermentation. And this.
So let it puff a little bit.
And that dough in here you've just made, tomorrow morning will make the best baguette. Okay? Just divide the dough straight from the fridge, divide them very lightly, and then you put your oven on at 240, and then you make your baguette in there, one cut on top, a lot of steam, and you'll be perfect. Good dough make good bread.
Magic. So you're going to shape that dough now?
Now I'm going to show you how to make the fougasse. So you can see the difference, yeah? So after resting, what's happened?
Oh.
Big difference, the same dough. So you can see how beautiful, responsive that dough is. But that dough is nice and strong now. So to make the fougasse, I'm going to show you what to do. So in here, I got some maize flour, which is like fine cornmeal. I love the color of it to bake in your oven. You can just use white flour, so don't worry about this. It's just my preference. You can use very fine semolina also. It just give you a nice color and finish. So I'm going to put quite a lot of flour on my table. Now, if I use a lot of flour now, this doesn't affect the texture of my fougasse inside. It's just for the aesthetic on the outside. When you start doing your fougasse, it's better to be safe than to have dough sticking everywhere. And what I do now, so my dough in here, that's my top in here. The bottom inside will be more sticky. So what I do, I release my dough like so, and let it drop on my table there. And with a scraper, I just help the dough to come down. So I'm not lifting the bowl and stretch it out. I'll do my left hand there, which is a bit awkward. Here we go. Make sure my bowl is clean. Put this away somewhere. So you can see that's the stickiest part of my dough in here. So put a bit more flour on the top. Like so. And the dough is so lovely and light. Okay, so be gentle with it all the time.
Could you just recap what kind of flour you're using to coat it?
That's maize meal, like fine cornmeal. So
not the same as corn flour.
No,
that's more like polenta.
Cornmeal. So like very, very fine polenta.
Could you use polenta?
You can use it a bit more coarser. You can mix polenta and flour together. It just gives it a nice finish. That's all. It's a bit different.
And is a metal bowl better, do you think?
Yes.
Natalie is asking.
Because if you use a big earthenware one, they're very heavy to maneuver. The light stainless steel bowl, they're very light, very practical. They're flimsy like a plastic bowl. So that's what we use all the time.
And talking of the flour, I mean, you hear about French bakers telling us that they've imported all the flour from France to make it really authentic, and sometimes they even import the water as well, I've heard. Really? True, is it better to use French flour and French water?
Yeah, I always made a pact with ourselves when we opened the school is to use as local produce as we can. So I use British meal all the time for our flour. When I used to run the bakery, we used to run with British flour or British meal. For me, every flour are very good if you know how to use them. So you got to understand the flour you're working with. So the flour we use at the school is from a local mill, and all the wheat is grown about. One flour is 25 miles radius. The other one we use mostly is 7 miles radius from the mill. So you speak to your miller. The difference also is all our flour is rested for at least 21 days before we use it. I don't use freshly milled flour, so it's rested in bags. So the one you buy in the supermarket is fine. It's been there for forever. I'm talking about big scale baking. We always rested our flour at the bakery. Always 21 day minimum, 28 sometimes. Because.
And where is, just to recap, where is your school, Richard? Alistair's asking.
Beautiful Bath, city of Bath. Not far from you, Xanthe, Bristol.
Not far from me, no. Bit posher than Bristol.
No, they're both good. They're both good.
Excellent. So what are you going to do next?
Yeah, just a quick word about the flour, because people are going to ask why resting the flour. For me, it's like wheat. The process of milling the flour is quite harsh on the wheat sometimes. The flour becomes really hot. So if by resting it, the flour oxidizes and rest and breathe, so you absorb better. It's more digestible. If you go in old books, they will tell you to rest your flour before using it. If I bake with fresh flour, it's green. It's just the dough doesn't take. It's you can't bake with it. So it's a different thing. But don't worry, I hope you'll be fine. I'm talking on big scale bakery.
And would it make a difference if you use hard water or soft water? Will that make a difference to the texture?
Not for home baking. Don't worry about it. You know, I've read books where they say you can't make bread with tap water. I mean, that's so pedantic. You know, we're lucky to have a tap to drink water. If you drink it, you can bake with it. So don't worry about where your water comes from. You know, it's a luxury to have tap water. So.
And Amanda is asking, she says, I normally use oil in the bowl at the resting stage. Why is using flour to line the bowl better?
It's not better. If I use an olive oil dough, I put a bit of olive oil. But for normal bread, I don't put olive oil. You don't need olive oil into it. We put olive oil because we're scared of stickiness. So don't worry about the stickiness. Get your dough. My non-stick side is your top. If you understand how dough works, it will not stick. So we always put
keep slapping that dough and turning it.
Just work with your dough. Don't compromise.
And I've got an excellent question here from Elizabeth, woman after my own heart, because I hate wasting things that have gone past their sell-by date. Can I use flour that's past its sell-by date?
If there's no little worm inside moving, it should be all right for dusting flour. But flour has got a shelf life, you know, so the strands of the flour will differ. So I always say, ask myself, why would you keep a bag of flour for 1 year in your stock cupboard? So it depends what you want to do with it. But you will lose some strands after a few months after the date.
And strength is kind of comparable to protein level when you're looking at the back of the
higher the
pack.
protein, the more water you need.
And what protein level flour do you use?
About 12 and a half at the moment.
Fantastic. I'm going to let you shape.
Okay.
Stop asking
That's
questions.
Good.
Shape.
So my dough is there. The other word I use a lot is faffing. When the dough is there, people start touching it for no reason. So leave it as it is. And then you're going to cut some triangles. So I'm going to make a triangle of dough. So I use my scraper. I use nice and flat to get a nice shaped triangle like that. And then I'm going to cut on the middle with my scraper nice and straight, like so. And then cut inside in here. Cut there, there, and there. In here, in here, in here. Then I can open it a little bit and then lift it on my pin. So you end up with that shape in here. So if your shape is a bit funny, don't worry, Halloween's coming, you'll be fine. Make a fougasse. There. And then we're going to make a little flame on the side, like that, with your scraper. At that stage now, you go straight in the oven. The beauty of the fougasse, you make your dough, let it rest, and bake straight away. You're going to see that beautiful texture. So if you follow me, I'm going to go to my oven. So I got my oven in here. And inside there's some baking stone and upside down. So you place it inside the door. The oven is at 230, 240. The higher you can your oven, the better. So make another one now. You can see what I'm doing. So make another triangle. I hope you can see there. And then again, cut the middle. It's important you use your scraper flat all the time, not like this or like this. Have the confidence to be exactly neat where you are and cut inside there. So you open it up. That's how simple it is. When you lift it, open your arms and lift it up. Don't lift it like this. You end up with a mankini. Not good. Just that. And then onto the pin. Just that. And then your little flames.
And a few more questions for you, Richard, here.
Put this in your oven and I'll do all the questions when they're baking.
Brilliant. Are you putting that onto a baking sheet in the oven? So you slide it onto a baking sheet?
The bottom shelf is a baking stone, square baking stone.
Oh, it's a baking stone.
I'm doing
okay.
Now, it's a baking sheet. I'm going to take it out and show you.
Thank you.
So in here, just a tray upside down, and that's going to fit nicely on top there. A bit too big for it.
So that's just a baking tray upside down. Fantastic. So that answers Amanda's question. You don't need a baking stone. You just use
Make sure your oven is really, really well preheated. Very often our oven are not hot enough. You need to, especially if people are at home, they open the door, all the heat goes out. You need your oven at 230, 240, and be very quick when you go in your oven. So you maximize your heat in there. You don't need steam for this. You can put steam if you want to. For the fougasse, you don't need to. You want really dry heat.
You don't need steam.
Just really a lot of heat into it.
Okay, brilliant. And how long is it cooked for?
Cook? No, we bake bread. We don't cook.
How long is that in the oven for?
You bake bread.
Oh, sorry. How long? How long is it baked for, Mr. Baker?
Depends on the size, but cooking bread. That's my big pet hate. This will take about 12, 15 minutes roughly in the oven. You can part bake them. The good thing with part baking, so they will take about 7-8 minutes. The crust just start to form. You can take them up, put them down, and wrap them in greaseproof paper in a plastic bag, freeze them. Or part bake in the morning, and in the evening, just put them back in a very hot oven, and then you end up with fresh bread again. So it's a very good, neat way of having fresh bread whenever you want.
And we had a question whether for a normal loaf, if you're just using the dough for a normal loaf, would you give it the resting and the proving?
So yeah, you can the same dough in here. You can just shape it. I'm going to show you quickly a bit of shaping there. So for a tin loaf, for example, you need, say, about 400 grams of dough, like so. Maybe a bit more of this one. I want to show you stuff fougasse after. So that will be my dough in here for a tin, for example. So my top is still underneath. I want the top to be on top of my loaf. So what I would just do in here is a very simple folding left to right. So you end up with square side in here. If I do it this way, you might see better. That's it. Like that. And then I make a spine on the middle. So your spine is where all the strands for your loaves got to go on. I would fold this over the top like this. Just press gently, not there, just on the center. And turn it around and do the same in here. There. Then fold this together and seal the two edges together. That's a very simple shaping, but then that's nice and strong, not floppy. And then you can put this in a tin when it's double in size in your oven with a bit of steam, water at the bottom of your oven, spray can, and then you have a perfect white loaf. That's how simple it is. It's about that strength in here. So if it was not strong enough, by doing the first fold, you can just put it this way. So your bottom is here, and do it a bit more this way. Reinforce that dough. Your top, still it's the same top in here. That makes sense?
Makes sense. And Michelle is asking what temperature Fahrenheit should she use? Because we've got a lot of people watching from across the pond. So that's a very good question.
I don't know if that's Fahrenheit.
I think you want about 450. Yeah. Pretty much as hot as your oven will go.
As high as you can. You get some heat in there, and you see the difference in your bread. Because the dough is so light, the expansion of your gas in there will give you that nice, beautiful texture inside. That's what you want.
And then Nicola's asked, can you stuff your fougasse? And I think you were going to talk us through some toppings.
So I've done some, but I'll show you basically if you have to do some stuffing. So that will be a piece of dough in here. And basically, if we do a very simple fougasse with onion, cheese, then you put your filling inside now. So if I put some olive oil, just olive oil for example, I put some olive oil in here. Then you can put some cheese also if you want to. Press it gently and just fold it over there. And then you can cut your fougasse like that. So if you put cheese, what I would do is put some parchment paper and put it on parchment paper. So your cheese won't stick to your oven. But that's how simple it is. Your dough is done. You can just really play with flavor. So I'm going to show you some I've done already. And that dough makes great pizza. So when you master that dough in here, this will make fantastic pizza, flatbread, anything. So if you master the basic recipe, it's incredible what we can do with it. So in here, so that's one. That's the one I've made here. You can see that. So I bet this afternoon, so it's going to be soft. I found it's light baked, so I could put them back in the oven to get a bit more crispy onto this. And this with olive. So I will cut them and show you the inside. Very nice. Here. So you need a good bread knife also. So for my plain fougasse, if I do this in here, you can see the texture of your fougasse inside. With the camera here, nice and light in here. If I cut the middle bit, you can see what I mean by that texture there. I hope you can see it there. There you go. That's nice and light. So when you eat that bread, there's a lot of chewing. The chewing makes you digest. The more saliva you got, the little crunch, the little what I call the crust. When you think of the crust and that little crunch, it makes you salivate straight away. That's what bread does to you. You just open your mouth get the saliva going, get the juice going, so you digest your bread. There's a little brain in here. If you switch on this one, it makes you digest better. That's why sliced bread, very heavy bread, too dense. When you eat it, there's no saliva, there's no crunch into it. So I'm going to show you the olive one now. So that's the olive one. Little rabbit, correct? You can see inside all the olive inside. And another one I've made. So I've made this one. It's got a hole inside, like I just showed you with the olive oil. And this one, I fold it over and just cut with a knife on top. So you can see all the cheese. I got some onion, red onions, and some lardon into it, and some Gruyere cheese. So all the stuffing is inside. So there's stuffed fougasse in here. So again, you can bake it light, really thin, and perfect for serving. If you cut through them. You can see your stuffing inside, all the lardon and the onions. So when you master your dough, you can really, really play with it and do different things and really impress your friends.
Fantastic. And we've got a couple of questions about baking parchment here, Richard. Do you use baking parchment when you're baking your loaves?
So you cut off when you say that. What do you say?
Do you use baking parchment?
Only if I use cheese in my dough. If I put cheese inside, or there's some pesto you might leak into the oven, I do. But for normal bread, like olive or something like that, I don't. I use the heat straight from the stove. But if you haven't got the confidence, you can always put some baking parchment, to do that. It's absolutely fine too.
And Roz is asking, when you put the dough in the bowl to rest, does it matter which way up it goes?
Yes, very good question.
Excellent.
Your top always on top. Okay. So as you see, my dough was there. I scrape it, my nice smooth side on top. I lift it and put the bottom on the bottom of the bowl. So when you turn your dough over, you always know where your top is. You don't want your dough to become a big mess. Because your top don't stick. If you know that, then it will stop you from adding flour ever you don't need to.
Fantastic. And if you do want to create some steam in your oven to give your dough a bit more of a lift when it's baking, do you use a water bath? Like, do you put some hot water in a baking tray at the bottom, or do you sprinkle it with water, or what do you do?
In my school, I got some pressure pump for garden spray. You put the pressure on, and we use that, so you get a very fine mist coming out. So when you open the door of the oven, the heat comes out, suck up all the air, and goes back in. So it becomes like steam atmosphere. Otherwise, you can take a tray, put it in the bottom of your oven, get it really, really hot, put it and put a pint of water on there, and then that will become steam also. So that's don't use ice cube. I mean, just like you mean you get like,
or just throw some ice cubes in the bottom. That sounds easy. And how long does the olive bread keep for? Perfect. And what? Sorry, go on.
So if you want your olive bread to last a couple of days, part bake it and then reheat it the next day. You fully bake on a day. The fougasse is the ratio of crust and crumb, so it will dry off a bit faster. So just part bake, 3/4 bake, and reheat again after. You don't have to fully bake everything to start with.
And what bread knife are you using?
Well, being French, that's one thing I use all the time. And I grew up with the knife called Opinel. I don't know if a little folding knife, Opinel. They do that range of knife for cooking now. And the bread knife are just out of this world. They're designed for bread. You know that curve in here, when you cut, it goes into the bread. So if you go with a straight bread, it's designed for a square loaf, boring. This one really cuts everything. It's a thin bread. It's fantastic. So I like it a lot.
Good tip. And a question from Jane. If you don't have a stone and you're using a baking sheet turned upside down like you did, is that more likely to stick than a stone is?
A steak or a fish on a cold pan, it will stick. So if your tray is really, really well plated and your dough, you got a bit of flour or semolina so it doesn't stick when you go in. If it doesn't stick when it goes in, it won't stick on the way out. Richard,
that has been absolutely fantastic. Really love that. I can't wait to. I've got my dough here.
Let me check the oven quickly, see if the first one is done.
Okay, that would be good.
So that's nearly done. It's about 7-8 minutes. So it's part baked now. So the crust just.
So you can put that in the freezer like that, and then just heat it
You
up.
can cool it. No, it's a bit hot. You cool it down first, and then you put it in a plastic bag, a paper bag, and then in a plastic bag, and then you freeze it. So when you're fresh, you take it out, defrost, and put it back in your oven. Perfect.
Fabulous. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Richard, for joining me. And thank you to all you amazing audience for coming along and asking such brilliant questions.